Hey guys, this is Philip here from Team 20 Stone, and I'm going to be talking about the Knights of the Round Table deck. So, the ruler for this deck is going to be Faria. She is a very strong ruler that is just released with the new dual decks, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, and she has some very unique abilities. First of all, when you flip her for only 2 white mana, she gets to flip another stone, which helps you stay ahead on your mana curve. And nextly, she has a very strong ability called God's Art. This separates her from other rulers. It's 2 white, 4 colorless, and it basically says you get to untap all of your resonators per turn. This is huge because you can flood the board easily with other knights, and then you can just God's Art, and then you basically get to swing twice with them per turn. So the next main portion of this deck also revolves around cards that came out with the dual deck, and that would be Regalia. The first one is Excalibur. Excalibur is a Regalia that gives +2/+2 when you tap it, and the biggest combo it has with Faria, each time you tap it, it reduces her God's Art ability by 2 colorless mana. And Faria can untap it when she attacks, basically tapping Excalibur twice for the turn and making her God's Art only 2 white mana. This can be huge and can win games. So the second Regalia that we will be using today is Leviathan the Demon Sword. And basically this will be used to give Faria swiftness, and it also gives her +2 damage when she attacks. So another advanced feature of this deck is floating counters on the swords. So basically, if you have untapped swords going into your draw phase, you can tap them before your recovery phase, and then as you recover, they come recovered with a counter that you can use without tapping them for that turn. So tapping the swords again will give 2 stacks of the sword to Faria. So that was the Regalia, some of the most powerful cards in the deck. Next up, we'll be talking about the creatures. First, we have Lancelot, the Knight of the Mad Demon. He is an extremely powerful 2 red drop. He has a 600 attack, 600 defense with swiftness. Special ability about him is if he gets buffed to have 1,000 or greater attack, he can burn a target resonator for 700 damage. This is free removal on almost anything your opponent will have. The next resonator that we have is Hector de Maris, the Acolyte of Mad Demon. And it's basically a 4/4 that can buff one of your target resonators with 400 attack. This is a great synergy with Lancelot, as you probably guessed by its name, because it puts it up to 1,000 attack, which then activates its burn ability. The next resonator that we have is Guinevere. She is a 200/400 for 1 red, and her special ability is tap her, then you get to banish one of your resonators to draw 2 cards and discard a card. This can be used on herself or another resonator that you have that you don't really have a use for, and it can search out game-winning cards that you don't have. Her second tap ability is used semi-often, but usually only late game, and it's not nearly as important as her first tap ability. The next resonator that we have is Perceval, the Seeker of the Holy Grail. This is one of my favorite and probably the best resonator in the deck because it basically lets you look at the top 5 and search for whatever you need at the time. If you're missing one of the Regalia, you can usually find it. Same thing with if you need a Lancelot to swing in for the 600. It also has an ability while it's on the field. You banish it, and it can prevent damage to your J-Ruler or other Knight of the Round Table, which is very useful in many situations. The last resonator in the deck is Gwain, the Knight of the Sun. Now, he has great synergy with all of the other Knights of the Round Table because he buffs them. It's an Anthem effect, +200/+200. Another great thing that you could possibly do, get 2 Gwains out with a Lancelot, and then you get the 1,000 damage bonus on Lancelot, which burns a target creature for 700. Okay, that is it for the resonators in the deck. Now we are moving to the spells. The first spell is 3 copies of Rapid Decay. Now, this is really strong in the current meta because there are 2-drop creatures everywhere, and it's just, you pay 1, you get rid of one of their creatures. Really great. The next spell that we have is Crime and Punishment. We play it as a 2 of, and it's good against any large creatures or Bahamut, large J-rollers that have flipped, because you can just use it, deal the damage back at the end of turn, usually ends up killing them. The next spell is a standby spell, Justice of the Godsword. Its normal ability will deal 500 damage, which is usually good enough to get rid of most of their creatures. But when you have Faria flipped, it'll do 800 plus 200 for each Excalibur that you tap. So you can make this thing really, really huge to get rid of very big threats just by having Faria flipped and Excaliburs tapped. And our last spell in the deck, we play For Thunder. Enough said. So that was it for our main deck. Now let's move on to our stone deck. For our utility stones, we play Almerius, the Levitating Stone, and Little Red, the Pure Stone. Now Almerius is a great stone, especially for giving Faria flying when she's huge. Gets you lethal a lot of games. Little Red, you call for red or white. Usually red if you get a turn 1. Helps you buff up the creatures and get your mana out. The next stones that we play are 2 copies of Magic Stone of Moonshade. We play 2 copies of this so that we don't get mana screwed early, because this is a fast-paced deck and we need the colors right away. The rest of our stone deck is 4 dual stones and 1 of each of a fire magic stone and a light magic stone, because that's our colors. So the mold strategy for this deck is pretty straightforward. You're looking for 1 of each regalia, Perceval because it's best 1-drop, and a Thunder because it's just great utility. Anything else you will usually mull to the bottom. So that was it for the stone deck. Now let's move on to the sideboard. So we have 4 copies of Galahad, the Son of God. This is good for subbing in against aggro or control just to get the extra life gain. The next sideboard card is the Little Prince. This is really important against Bahamut decks or other really fast-paced decks because you just get the 1000 life and they usually can't deal with that. Next we have 2 copies of Crime and Punishment. You can throw these in when you're playing against Bahamut or other decks that have large creatures. We play 2 split Heaven and Earth. This is for control decks, decks that play only special magic stones. The last card that we play is Flame King's Shout. There's 3 copies of this because it is extremely strong against any aggro deck that just floods their board, any Gwiber deck, or just people that have decks that play a lot of creatures with less than 400. Well, that was the deck, guys. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you liked it. If you did, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below if you have any questions. Stick around for more.